Leona, so that's where they're going to go with this. We'll have the Aphelios lane down there with the Rakan. Delight has been, I think, very quietly one of the most impactful players for Fred Brion in this best of 3. I think that will continue here. But I really like T1's comp. Like, you know, it's like the end of the cereal commercial, part of your balanced breakfast, where they show all the other things that they're not selling, but they're like, make sure you have the orange juice and the milk, right? And like, in this case, Braum is the milk and Leona's the orange juice. You can choose which drink you'd want to have with your breakfast, but...
By the way, I don't think you should drink orange juice if you're also having cereal.
It's not
all the sugar from the cereal, it makes the orange juice taste weird, and also
don't do it.
Milk with the orange juice is not a great.
You ever have orange juice with Pop-Tarts? Ooh, don't do that.
Whoa.
Don't brush your teeth before you drink it.
Wow.
Don't brush your teeth.
Awful.
Don't brush your teeth before you drink that orange juice. But anyway, yeah, it's a very balanced composition, right? And I personally really like the Braum over the Leona, considering that, you know, yes, you have really strong follow-up engage if Leona's able to hit a really nice Solar Flare or Zenith Blade. But because you have such good engage anyways in general between the Arrow, the engage you're going to have with Renekton, right, the Gnar, I feel like you don't need that as much, and you'd rather be able to peel against this Sylas a lot better, help deal with this Rakan that's going to engage the Gwen. Like, I really like the Braum for that, you know, as a counterpoint. So,
yeah,
not a ton to block with the shield, but, you know, I think what he offers you is much better here.
Absolutely. So we are going to be jumping into Game 3 as we do go into this one. Fred Brion's comp as well. No slouch. I mean, if this game goes even into the late game, I actually really like Fred Brion's comp. I feel like T1's comp wants to get ahead early and often and try to roll that tempo into winning sometime around, you know, 25, 30 minutes. If you're going longer than that, the Ashe might not be having too much fun. She has the Braum, of course, but besides that, there's not too much peel. And, you know, Viego, Gwen, Aphelios, even the Sylas in the late game. We've seen some of our better mid laners do some incredible stuff on that pick recently. Like, I just really like what Fred Brion, if they can just go even and sustain through some of this early pressure, I like what they can bring into the late game.
Owner hasn't played Italy yet this season, but it is one of the champions he's liked to play in the past, and I am excited to see how he performs here, because when you have a comp like this that sets up your spears so well, it's kind of hard to miss. It's kind of hard to mess it up when there's so many ways to guarantee those spears landing. You have Ashe Arrow connect from a really long way away. That's a really long stun. You hit that spear, right? Somebody might die. Somebody has to flash. Like, these things really empower you as a Nidalee. The comp is not just about the Renekton, right, for the Nidalee. There's so many ways that he can do quite well. And it doesn't have to be early. It doesn't have to be for ganks. He can actually just play this a very slow farming game, and then look for the Night Harvester, look for kind of speeding up the later parts of the game where he's going to do lots of value. I think a low-risk game for Owner is probably the way you want to play this, and that's kind of how he's been playing his last few series here for T1, is just kind of farming it out, looking for late-game engages, looking for late-game team fights to find his real power, instead of trying to empower his already very great laners. And I think the biggest issue for T1's comp is kind of playing on fire here.
Yeah.
The biggest issue for their comp is something that, you know, I know Atlas likes to talk about a lot, is the Sylas into the Gnar is so powerful, because the Gnar bar is a resource you have to manage as T1, whereas Hijack allows you to have that ultimate whenever you want on a champion that can arguably use it better in any case. Like, he's kind of guaranteed to get value out of it, and that's scary when we get to the later parts of the game. So that's something to watch out for Kana on, is can he actually have those consistent engages we're talking about with the Gnar, or will that actually just be a liability?
Yeah. Sylas definitely, in many ways, just a better Gnar when you do come down to it. You can't always have that hijacked Gnar ultimate available, of course, which I suppose is one of the downsides. But
you almost always can, though.
Yeah. Sylas definitely one of the most obvious picks that we do see that are very often for a good reason. And this lane, you know, so far, I mean, in game number 2, Oya was getting some nice work done early on. But with the Viego, Kana was pretty easily able to hold on. As we're taking a look at some very interesting stats here. Nidalee and Renekton together, 2-9. Not having the success it had, I mean, Nidalee in years past.
Nidalee's not even going to look at Renekton in this portrait. He's like, you're dragging this stat down, it's not me, okay?
They're obviously fighting in that picture.
Renekton had pretty bad stats early on in the season where most of this duo was played. We haven't seen a lot of Nidalee since then. But yeah, the stats still hold true. It was neither of these champions have really been changed since they were played earlier on. See if that can work out a little bit better, because I like this comp. Like, I'd like to see the Nidalee stat with all 4 of the other champions with her, right? Because I think this is a really good comp to make sure that she can guarantee spears.
All right, they're trying to use this mid prio to get double scuttle. Definitely a good thing to do with the Nidalee early on. This is how you can exert that pressure. The Ashe hawk shots were already coming out and spotting the Viego, and it allows them with the Renekton to secure this for Owner. So that's going to be a very nice early lead that he will secure.
Yeah, that's pretty massive for him. A lot of extra gold going over, a lot of extra vision control, and there's just nothing that Fred Brion could do about it. Umpty scryered the incorrect way, didn't even get any extra vision there around that, but he knew what was going on. Scryered up instead of scrying down.
Yeah.
I suppose you could argue he was trying to clear the vision above him, potentially, if there was any. There is 1 ward to the left of his wolf camp, but either way, you know, it's a pretty slow and calm early game compared to some of the games we've been watching in the LCK recently. And I think for Owner, you're feeling pretty good about that. End up getting your alternator early. It's going to be a small power spike for him going into some of these upcoming fights.
Yeah, it's definitely a really awesome back to go back and be able to afford that and just get right back into things. Nidalee not necessarily needing the boots super early on with her passive.
Yeah.
Just running around the jungle, being very fast and all that good stuff.
It's crazy, like, when you get alternator in the late game when you're building an item that you need it for, you're like, well, I hate having to build this together because it's very expensive and it's not great, but you're like, well, I have to buy this. Whereas in the early game, it's extremely strong if you can get it this early, and it makes a huge impact.
Yeah, it's
that extra
a
damage.
bit clunky in that manner, as they may have been able to see exactly where he's backing. Yes, they will, and that is a Dark Harvest stack, the first one for Owner, who is being very annoying in this early game, as you would expect.
It's not done yet.
Yeah, he's just going to get in the face of Umpty, and, you know, this Viego, he's going to be happy taking those kinds of trades, as yes, a spear will land, but that is just about that.
I mean, Kana has his Narbar up, so I like this positioning here for Owner because he has a lot of agency here right now. Teleport coming through.
There we go. There's the stun, but Spear takes a little bit longer. Jumping in, not able to secure that kill, but Faker will be able to, as now they're looking for a little bit more. Umpty underneath the turret stays around a little bit too long, and Faker perfectly able to tank that turret, and no hope for Lava. Teleport was down.
I can't remember the last time I saw Faker teleport in the early game to the top side of the map where it wasn't a great success for T1. They are so good at making these plays happen on the top side of the map where you look at, okay, I've got the resources set up here. Owner comes in. This is a 3-step process, right? Owner comes over here, threatens the Sylas, prevents his back, comes over, starts trading with Umpty, and Kana's like, I got my Narbar. Faker's here. Like, they call the teleport super early. He gets the dash through and gets the kill. This is so well set up, and it was set up moments before this. It's so perfect here how much value they get out of a single teleport, and this just keeps happening with Faker. Every time he goes topside, it's at the exact right timing to make a big play and get a huge early lead, and this is why, statistically, T1 is our best early game team, as plays like this, around the jungle, around Faker's teleport, have been so successful.
Yeah, and you have to wonder, you know, Lava teleporting into the mid lane at that timing, it seemed pretty obvious that they were looking for a play up on the top side with how aggressive Owner was getting.
Yeah.
But at the same time, maybe there was a wave coming in, right? Faker pushes in the wave after delaying the back of Lava, and he's like, okay, I can teleport from base to the top side. Whereas Lava's like, well, you know, I'm sorry, guys, but I don't want to miss 10 minions in the mid lane.
Yeah.
I didn't see the exact wave state, but that's what I'm expecting as to
right.
why he teleported into the mid lane. But not having the Sylas for a 3v3 makes it a much more easy dive to pull off for T1.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, Lava is only 12 CS behind, is going to catch up a little bit on that, but it's not a great start here. Now your Renekton's starting to come online. Does have his executioners, so Sylas can't lifesteal his way into those trades as easily. It's pretty common to build that into this matchup. A lot of matchups into the Sylas, in fact. And for Lava here, like, just trying to catch waves, and guess who is farming the red side jungle? It's Owner. He is everywhere. He's harassing. He's got so much vision. Look at all these wards that are planted here by the Nidalee, who's just guaranteeing so much pride. Now, the trade-off is that Henna is going to get some plates down here, but the Rift Herald is going to be so much more valuable. And there's just nothing you can do as Fred Brion on the top side of the map. At least they get this as a consolation prize.
Yeah, and when you consider how passively Fred and Brion are playing around that Rift Herald, I think it was even before they saw the Ashe rotating. I don't even know if Gumayusi had to go up to the
yeah,
side.
exactly.
He could have even thrown an arrow and said, I mean, 4v4, you guys should win, right? But instead, what happens is Henna gets 2 free plates. Whereas the Ashe could have absorbed the pressure, eaten the wave, gotten all that CS, not missed the XP, and so it becomes a little bit awkward. It's still going to be very fantastic for T1's tempo here that they're keeping up in this game, that you can get the Rift Herald extremely early on, right when it spawns, and look to get a first turret here very easily, although Owner is getting a little bit too frisky up here in the top side.
Steals a lot of that camp away, though, which is a lot of gold Umpty's going to lose. You know, he's been taking away a lot of this top side jungle. And unfortunately, he's not able to turn it into such an advantage that this ends up being like an extra turret that goes down, and maybe they use this Herald to get the inner turret gold. Not going to quite be that kind of lead, but if things go a little bit worse for Fred Brown, there was a huge opportunity there. Either way, so much control.
Pretty interesting that they don't drop the Rift Herald up on the top side, but mid turret is also pretty low, and you consider that he had to flash away. They didn't exactly have full control up on the top side. As you mentioned, I think they want to just get more value out of this Rift Herald.
I think they're going to do it now. Like, okay, now everyone's backed up. We're going to come up here again. We're going to do the exact same thing. They have, look at all the vision they have. They have all these control words here. They know no one else is going to match the rotation. So this time, the Demolish procs, and the Rift Herald is going to crash into that second turret. Might even get a kill here.
Now they're definitely going to at least poke Hoya away from the wave so that they can push this one in. And as you mentioned, no one is around. I think Umpty at this point, you're too far away. Just take the Drake. As this trade in the mid lane, Faker is really abusing this early pressure that he does get from the kills and, of course, the Renekton versus Sylas.
Going to be the double charge. That is so much value here, and they're just denying Umpty from rotating.
Oh, wow. Look at Faker. I mean, he knows Lava's still here, right? So he's like, okay, I can go 1v2. He's got help from his teammates on the top side, knows that he can rotate up there, is able to push them away. Nice damage up onto the inner turret in the top lane.
This is beautiful play from T1 macro-wise. Just cutting them off, drawing a line across the map, saying you cannot pass this, you cannot come up here. The Rift Herald is going to get a second charge. A lot of resources committed in order to make that happen, but it was just I mean, the only person who really has to say, well, I'm going to have to go up here a second time is Owner, but he ends up getting value, right? He's taking away the jungle camps anyways. He's got a lot of camps on his side of the map to take because Umpty still has to rotate top, so he's not losing camps. He's not being counter-jungled during this time. Faker's winning this mid-matchup so aggressively they can make plays like that and push Umpty away. It's just really maximizing the value you can get out of an early lead. Both these teams are so good at it. It's just that T1 gets that early lead more often, right? And last game, when they were behind, you could see they kind of had to try to force their way back into the game. It didn't work, but this is a great start for T1. It doesn't get much better than this.
Yeah, they're really exerting their pressure and showing us the power of Renekton in Italy and what it can offer. It's not even like they were sneaky about their plays of it, and Lava is just coming in. He's like, well, I can be Braum too, and that is going to help him survive. But another Dark Harvest stack will go over to Owner, as full map control right now is handily in the hands of T1 at this point in time. Everybody on the side. That is a really nice spear. Got so close to hitting the light there through the wall. Scaria, again, is just trying to push them away from the mid turret so that the Faker can take this down.
And that's almost a double if this goes a little bit better for T1. You could tell, like, you could see, like, you know, metaphorically, Gumu's just got his ultimate arrow knocked. Like, he's ready to fire that in if this ends up being a little bit more damage done there. And now Fred and Breon have this small advantage around this Mountain Drake. It's going to be the first Drake of the game when it does go down. But look at all the vision they have to clear first. It's so difficult to actually say, okay, we have just enough of an advantage to actually start this Drake when, you know, T1, if they collapse onto you, you're in big trouble. But they do see the commitment top side here, and they are going to go ahead and take this for free. Hoya, well, I thought they saw this. Suppose maybe not. He does back away. I think he's aware.
Yeah, just the timing of the push and them going back means that they'll be able to eke out a little kill here. But as you mentioned, this pressure up on the top side is going to be so annoying, and there's not really much that Hoya can do. It's not like he can get in range.
No.
With Meganar coming up as well, you got to respect this pressure.
I mean, they're just utilizing, once again, the power of Demolish with this Gnar pick so extremely well. So much extra gold going over to T1. They have 3 turrets at 13 minutes. Like, think about that for a second. Like, suddenly realize that this is a 6K gold lead with 2 kills at 13 minutes.
With 2 kills.
T1's macro, I don't think they could have played it out better. Like, it's just so clean.
Yeah, and it was very straightforward and quite obvious, right? It was very telegraphed. They're like, okay, guys, we're gonna go to the top side and we're gonna dive you. Like, the Nidalee right in their face, and Faker going back, having the teleport available, and they just kind of force their way through it, and it's very clean. Fred and Brion haven't found an answer yet, and I mentioned at the beginning of the game, I'm like, well, if Fred and Brion can kind of get through evenly or not too far behind and get to a later stage of the game, they have a lot of options, but this is not that type of game. No. With this amount of momentum that T1 have, their comp should demolish them.
And speaking of demolish, Kana's like, well, there's another turret over here, so I guess I'll head down, make an impact. Now the Gnar ultimate is hijacked and Delight is here, but I think Kana should be able to get out of here no problem. And like, the problem for Fred and Brion is that their comp can set up some combos. They can team fight really well if they can, have a really nice Gnar ultimate themselves. After it's hijacked, if they can set up with really good Moonlight Vigil. Delight has had so many great moments on both the champions it's played, so far this series, the Alistar and the Rakan. But unfortunately, with the deficit you have and the lack of map control, you're never going to be able to take that fight on even terms. You're never going to be able to have that safe setup to look for a 5v5 front-to-back team fight, We might just see this Gnar ult used on minions or something here, unfortunately, because there's just no way to really commit to this fight. Like, Delight's like, maybe he'll make a mistake. Kana said, no, I won't, actually, and life goes on. But it's hard to come back in this one. It really, really is, because you also don't have a comp that is going to empower this Viego pick as well,
All right, well, this is one way to do it. Kana getting baited into this one, but again, it's only Rakan, and you can see the amount of damage that the Gnar can do from this point in time. Finally, the charm comes out. A little bit too little, too late, as yes, Kana might die, but he's able to pick up the kill 1v2, and everybody on the side of Fred and Brion had to be down here.
Yeah, everybody has to be down here. Now, luckily for Fred and Brion, that isn't going to cost them much on the map. It is going to give a really strong push to Faker, who is going to now start to threaten the inhibitor turret after this wave crashes in. There's no, Drake or anything, or Rift Herald or a Baron that goes down for this, but still ends up being pretty massive. Faker's like, I'm just going to get this gold, and we're going to look for Hoya.
He's a real fast croc in this one. He's going in, and they're going to get the flash, or not the flash, but the dash away from Hoya, I suppose.
Yeah, he loses his flash and his teleport for this, but they're going to get a turret, so it's not all bad.
Just, just trying to exert as much pressure as possible. And that's really what you have to do. Like, some other teams, they might get this lead, and they're like, okay, well, now we can sit back and wait.
TWon,
let's look for the second Rift Herald. It's like, no.
Yeah, TWon, a.k.a. Turret 1, a.k.a. Turret 5 now. They've taken off of the map with the second Rift Herald. They have now a nearly 7,000 gold, or 6,300. I want to get too ahead of ourselves here, but it's a massive, massive gold lead for these champions that are going to do well in a straight-up 5v5 team fight. Owner is well and truly online, as we're going to watch this from Kana. It's a bait here, but he actually ends up getting the second ultimate, which is way better here. Into the wall.
Again.
Wall of power. Ends up getting the kill. Wants to get two, and then he's
나
like,
앞으로 갈게.
he's like, I'm just going to go
나
for
거의
it.
죽을만해. 이거 Gwen 라칸 노궁. Gwen 라칸 노궁이야.
And saying Gwen and Rakan both ulted, so they don't have them up.
And Silas.
Yes.
I mean, well, kind of.
He's saying their ults are down, basically.
Yeah. And, yeah, Fred and Brion, I mean, the one thing they were able to get in this game was the turret. Or not the turret, the Mountain Drake, of course. And T1, they should be able to pick up pretty much every Drake from here on out, you would imagine. And with the options we have, Infernal and Ocean, I mean, those are pretty much the generic best two that we have in the game, right? And so they're going to be happy with either one that does come up. I feel like Infernal will help them to close the game out a little bit easier. But either way, they're just going to be able to have supreme control over all these objectives. And Fred and Brion are really going to be pressed to have any timing where they can really fight for any of those.
It's just, I mean, if you look at the map, it's all blue. And that's the problem for Fred and Brion. Like, how can you flank? How can you catch someone? How can you set up for, a really awesome Silas flank where you're able to catch somebody and look for a first reset for Umpty and then the fight goes well? Like, how can you make that happen when you can't see? You're blindfolded by T1's clearing of the vision. On top of it, it's hard when you look at the items and how fed T1 are in general. Like, if you try to look for that type of engage, like, Silas will just get blown up sometimes. He has a stopwatch at least going into these the next fight, which might actually just be a very early Baron start for T1. And for T1, you're just not afraid of anything. Like, you have no reason to fear walking into the jungle right now to take that vision away. There's no turret.
Yeah.
There's nothing.
Faker taking it very literally, and so his owner actually has to flash back over the wall.
Maybe a little. It should be a little bit more afraid, but
dial it back, maybe like 1 or 2 more numbers. Just a little bit less. Yeah, I mean, you know, you can see what they're trying to do. Like, at this point, this is the time where TWon might have some success trying to create a lull state, because getting that first dragon actually does buy you an extra 5 minutes, technically, before the soul does get up, and you have at least one inner turret in the mid lane. Maybe you can kind of create a, you know, fortification there and just try to farm, get your Aphelios up there, and just hope that T1 can't do much. The unfortunate thing for them is that T1 should just be able to take this Baron, especially with the amount of vision control they were able to have. Some of that has been cleared out actually pretty nicely by Delight, so it will be delayed, you'd imagine.
Yeah, we have the, I forget the exact name of it, the steampunk chainsaw or whatever that is Shield and Eye for Kana. So that's going to be massive for them. They have the executioners for Faker. He's had that for a really long time. It's really difficult for Lava to carry these fights. And what's really scary for TWon is what T1 can do if they don't like the Drake fight or how it's set up. They can just push an inhibitor turret, just like we saw in Game 1. They have the power to do that in this game with a fairly fed Gnar, who again has Demolish. So you can see where he is right now. He's like, well, we can actually threaten this Baron by clearing vision here. They can't stop me from pushing. So we have 2 win conditions on the map right now, and as TWon, you have to deal with both somehow.
Ocean Rift, by the way, as the stun is going to come down here. The Braum ultimate from Lava actually is pretty nice, as now we get the engage, and this is one way they can get on in here. Faker is just unkillable, though, in that back line, as Hoya does get a lot of value. Turns out to be a 1-for-1, but a lot of low health bars here on the side of T1 and actually TWon. So
and they only lose the Braum. You know, it's a trade of supports here, but T1 are in a really nice spot with these low health bars, so maybe just step back, reset, and look for a Baron, because TWon can't reset as quickly. They have to deal with this push. They have to deal with both the mid push and the bot push. You can see the pings going down here for TWon on the Baron. They've cleared some of the vision on the top side of the pit, but I mean, look at all the control wards here for T1. Otherwise, gonna go back and watch this exchange one more time. Is, you know, trading even at this stage of the game is a pretty good look for TWon. They are able to punish this quite well. They're playing around this Baron vision. They have to commit a teleport to this. As you can see, Hoya comes through. Faker is just so unkillable, though. Like, this is not a good look for how the team fights could go if T1 are not playing a team fight with one hand tied behind their back.
yeah.
But hey, small victories.
Okay, well, I don't know if you want to be fighting Faker here, but stealing Dominus is going to scare him off, and of course the follow-up rotation from TWon means that Faker just backs away.
I would love to see Kana's damage to turrets across this best of 3. Oh, he's like, I'm waiting for the next turret.
He's reaching new levels, new heights here.
He is just going to continue to threaten that side lane. He has teleport, which we know that Hoya does not, right? Because he committed, so he will not be able to match. It's actually because of that, Lava is clearing the wave, so he can match the teleport back in if the Baron is started for T1. With all the vision control they have, I think we're getting into a world where it's realistic for them to actually start hitting it and actually beginning to threaten this win condition.
Faker
They will.
is...
Or not.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, at some point, you have such gigantic item spikes here. I mean, even 2 items on the middle-y, like...
Horizon focus, yeah, it's like...
This is where you want to fight, right?
Yeah.
You don't... And you can see they're like... they're just itching for doing something. They're trying to clear out all of the vision if possible. They're really trying to exert as much pressure as possible. But they're not quite willing to go straight for the Baron just yet.
Yeah. Arrow engage.
Yeah, I mean, they say, like, well, I guess everybody's in that one brush. We've cleared out all the other vision.
The thing is, like I was saying before when we talked about the draft, if you hit an arrow even on one person, that means a spear connects, and it's on a pretty low cooldown, so that's almost always worth it, actually, when you're setting up for an objective like this. You hit that arrow on Rakan, and he's got a back.
Yeah.
Can't be part of this fight, and guess what? That's all it takes. That's basically a kill. Even though he's not dead, he can't participate.
Yeah, for sure. It's kind of like the idea of Rumble as well, where it's like, oh, I just threw an equalizer, and you have half health now, so you can't come in here. As they're trying to, but this amount of vision clear has been great, trying to get into the pit now, but the Gnar ultimate over the wall, and the Viego just melts into that wall immediately. As now they're trying to get on top of Hoya. Faker didn't want to have to flash, but he will to pick up that kill. And now it is 5v3 with the Baron, and T1 can basically do whatever they want.
This level of macro control that T1 showed us with their early game power, we know how great they are at using those mid teleports. Faker, again, has been so successful. I can't remember the last time that did not go well for him when he teleported top with a setup like that. This is the kind of T1 you want to see in playoffs. This is the level of macro control that is going to give some of our good mechanically strong teams big issues. Cleanse has to be used. But like, if you're a team, you know, like Genji, for example, that has very strong mechanical players, but sometimes drops the ball in the macro in the early to mid game and sometimes in the late game, this T1, with their understanding of how to abuse the map, how to actually get advantage of Summoner's Rift, like that's a team you don't want to face right now. Like T1 is the part of the storyline for us going into this is, does T1 actually make a run for that top spot? And after losing in game 2, you're like, well, this should have been a little bit more dominant. But in the 2 games they win, but this game is most certainly over. In the 2 games they win in the series, it's clean. Like, it is so clean. It's extremely one-sided. And it just shows you how powerful T1 is when they are ahead. We have to work on what happens when they're a little bit behind or it's an even game. But, man, this was a treat to watch. Unless you're a Fred Brion fan.
Yes, the caveat is there. As you were speaking from the T1 perspective, of course. And Henna, still annoying. You can see if he's got the right guns, he will be able to clear out some of these waves. But I think T1 from this position, they're so far ahead that at some point you can kind of just throw Faker in there and he's just not going to die. And, you know, see what sticks.
Yeah.
As they're just going to push here. They've got a nice little 4-1 going. Faker kind of freelancing there in the middle. Says, well, we can just go into the mid lane, that's fine.
He's got, I mean, they have the arrow available here, so, I mean, whenever they want to pull the trigger, once these turrets are down, is one of the easiest ways.
Oh, that was cool.
But it is
through
Rakan.
the gate.
If he gets somebody else, that's actually a kill, but he got the Rakan, sadly.
Well, we're just going to pretend that arrow didn't happen, but at least the spear landed. That was cool.
Yeah.
And Owner's been doing well on these. The Horizon focus really paying off. And all you got to do is slow push here, try not to get engaged upon. Use your volleys, your spears, your Braum to just keep them at a distance while you take down their inhibitors.
Who's your player of the game? I'm putting you on the spot.
Give it to Faker.
You give it to Faker again?
Yeah.
It's between Owner and him for me again. I think I have to give it to Faker. His decision-making has been so great. Owner helped set up a lot of that. It's been just a great game from T1 across the board. Start to finish.
Yeah. Push it in here now. Gonna take down the second inhibitor. It's just the spears are just too much when you're this far behind.
No, you get hit by one of those and you lose the game.
Well, Moonlight Vigil is down now, and you can see Umpty was looking to potentially set something up with that, but the answer will be no.
Arrow's almost ready again here for Gumusi. So, meanwhile, Khan is like, well, I could just go to the top side of the map. I think we've all seen this movie before. And T1 don't have, the arrow went wide, as you mentioned earlier, the last one he used. They don't have, you know, insane, consistent engage. They have a lot of poke with the Nidalee spears. And I think T1 has played a lot of this late game, if you will, because we're not that late into the game, but they've fully been online for quite some time now. They've played a lot of it extremely safely because they just don't want to lose the game, considering how ahead they are. There's just no reason to go, well, we could just go in and Faker will never die and we'll win the fight and it'll be close because we're fighting under their turrets, fighting in their base. But we'll still win the game. They're just not even going to take that chance because there's just simply no reason to. Because at the end of the day, winning this series is all that matters. No matter how quickly you win it is not important. It's just going to play it out extremely oppressively.
What about when we're comparing stats in playoffs and T1 has a slightly slower win speed?
Yeah, no, I mean, that's where
Someone tries to create a narrative based off of that. Like, what about then?
That is the one thing that actually I was literally thinking about before you said it. I was like, that's the one thing that will be changed by this.
All right.
Okay.
Finally, we do have that coming in, but he has cleanse again, so I mean, they get the cleanse. It's not exactly the longest cooldown.
And Owner was not in a position to spear him at that moment either, but Kana is like, you guys come top, I'm going to play tennis, we're going to go to the other side.
Kana's been having a really fun time this series.
He really has.
PvE, just breaking down the turrets and the inhibitors and the minions. A lot of those too.
He's a big turret killer. Games 1 and 3.
Yeah.
He's loving it. And that's going to be the first. Oh, it's like, he's going to get that inhibitor. There it goes.
And that will be the inhibitor.
It's actually the
going
second
down.
inhibitor, of course, not the first one, but feels like the first one.
That's why
in
he
a while.
waited. He heard you say first, and he's like, wait, gather yourself. It's actually the second.
Sorry.
Whoa.
Ooh, it hurts.
Yeah. Diego has some ways to get that back, but at the end of the day, another spear will be coming in. And T1, as you mentioned, I mean, this is just supreme safety from them. Really not pushing the issue at this point. They're probably just going to take Ocean Drakes, take the next Baron, and then go for the push and end.
Yeah. If you're a T1 fan, just enjoy the show. Watch those spears connect, get excited, because that's what you're going to be watching a lot of, is the same sort of rinse and repeat push towards the inhibitors that become more and more deadly as time goes on. You overextend as Threat of Breon to try to get vision around this Baron. You might just lose right here, right now.
Oh, no. Well, here we go. This time the cleanse not available, so the team has to try to defend them. They do that decently well. As actually the root does go down. Hoya trying to frontline here a little bit, and a massive spear into that back line with the boomerang follow-up, and maybe now they will be able to kill that Aphelios. And that is going to be the nail in the coffin. They get a couple here in the mid lane, and they'll push for the victory.
You have no choice as Threat of Breon but to try to push towards Baron and remove that vision and hopefully win a scrappy team fight, but the push alone to try to get mid control, to get those wards cleared out, cost them. Big arrow, big spear, that's the game. T1, fantastic macro tonight in their 2 wins. The game they lost, I would even argue they played great macro there too. You know, lots of good side laning from Faker. They understand how to use the map so well against a team that has some really, you know, not veteran players, right? Like I would say, you know, the fact that Threat of Breon kind of choked up a little bit when they fell behind in both games is kind of the big difference between these two teams and how much experience they have. You have someone like Faker who can call the shots, and sometimes he was a little bit aggressive in that regard in game 2, but they played